island in the Caribbean inhabited by just over 11 million people. The Cuban population can be described as a multi-ethnic melting pot with European, African, Latin American, and even Asian influences. As a result, Cuba is home to various religions from Roman Catholicism to Congolese Palo Mayombe. 18th and 19th century Cuba thrived on coffee and sugar plantations that were cultivated by hundreds and thousands of West African slaves. By the peak of Cuba's slave-based economy, nearly a third of the island's population consisted of slaves. Only after nearly 400 years of backbreaking slave labor, in 1886 did the Royal Spanish Decree officially abolish slavery in Cuba. The majority of slaves in Cuba were forcibly brought from West Africa and stripped of all their possessions and dignity. However, not even the whips of their slave masters could destroy their ties to Africa. Their culture, food, music, dance, and religious identity all made the journey with them. Yet, on the island, slave masters forbade them from practicing their indigenous religions, concerned it could lead to slave unity that could give rise to rebellion.
Cuando llegaron los negros africanos, llegaron aquí a Cuba, ellos tenían los secretos de muchas religiones, lo mismo el santo, lo mismo el palo. Dentro del palo solamente podían practicarlo nada más los negros, pero los blancos que dominaban a los negros no le dieron el permiso porque traían muchos secretos. Sí. Y con esos secretos podían eliminar muchas cosas, inclusive hasta la vida de una persona.
They were therefore forced to adopt Christianity by law. Despite all these obstacles, West African slaves were determined to preserve their African spiritual roots. They understood that in the face of a violent storm, only the most flexible trees would survive, whereas the ones that refused to bend would be ripped out of the ground and die. Thus, from as early as 1515, and without the knowledge of their slave masters, West African slaves started to syncretize their African deities with Roman Catholic saints to mask and preserve their religious practices. The slaves were secretly worshipping their African gods under the facade of praying to Catholic saints to avoid unwanted attention from slave masters. This is how Santeria, also known as La Regla Lukumi, was born. Every Yoruba deity, known as Orisha, was given a Catholic saint equivalent. Oshun, the sensual goddess of love and femininity, became Our Lady of Charity. Shango, the thunderous king of the heavens, became known as Saint Barbara. Ochosi, the skilled hunter and the Orisha of justice, was equated to Saint Norbert. Yamaya, the mother of all living things and the queen of the sea, became the Virgin of Regla. Orumila, the deity of wisdom and foresight, was now Saint Francisco. And Obatala, the father of all Orishas and the owner of everybody's head or consciousness, was tied to Jesus Christ, and so on. Each Orisha was given a distinct set of colors to represent it and be worn by its devotees in the form of necklaces and bracelets known as elekes and ides.
Y este es de Yemayá, de la reina de los mares. Aquí tenemos los ideses, que es donde viene el Badalá, el ide de Badalá, el ide de Changó, el ide de Yemayá, el ide de Ochosi, el ide de Ochun y los ideses que son de Orunas.
Mira, los babalaos, él es babalao, el de la cabeza amarilla. cámara, enséñale lo que yo voy a poner. Eso es lo que tú tienes que usar.
Esto tú tienes que usarlo, mira, por obligación.
Los babalaos se
usarlo.
reconocen por eso.
Por obligación. El babalao se reconoce porque tú tienes orula.
Sí.
¿Me entiendes?
Throughout our trip, we stayed at the house of Ana Soila Perez, an Oshun and Ifa priestess living in Havana. A 30-year practitioner of Santeria, Ana, or Madrina as we call her, is a member of the Yoruba Association of Cuba who earns a living by doing Orisha initiations and using her talents as an artist to craft colorful Santeria bracelets and necklaces. In our first few days in Havana, we went to Madrina's father, a high-ranking Babalao named Miguel Angel Perez, for an Ifa divination session. A Babalao, a term that directly translates to father of the secrets, denotes a priest of Ifa in the Yoruba religion. And at 83 years old, Miguel had been a Babalao for over 40 years. His demeanor reminded us of our wise spiritual elders known as Bokors in Ghana.
¿Cuántos usted necesita por derecho? 20.
Pedro pues bueno fue un lazo tuvo malo con Santo una masacre lo Martínez Pérez le digo pues fue un culo a ponerme ahorita va a conseguir de tipo tan pico que te va a morar salino de conjunta Heredio Martino Canalleco Benito Herrera Gunda que te Jacinto Pesa Fernando Pecana Manolo Peña Pero Mojones Maquete Canahueta H baba H yeye H corda H corolifa H me olui a locha baba locha a coderi a callar por ahí a cuadro tú a cuadro sí.
Ask Ifa for anything, man.
So the system of divination that we're going to use is called Ifa, and it's a system that came from Nigeria. The slaves brought it with them. But basically the divination is based on predetermined signs. So there are a total of 256 signs of when he throws the chain, which is called the equele over here. And each sign has a specific message for the person. It has the specific songs attached to it. It has the specific guidelines, dietary guidelines, behavioral guidelines, the necessary sacrifices that you must do. And so when you're going to do a divination, you don't tell the Babalao what you came to do. You speak in the derecho, which is the 20 CUC. You're gonna, hold it in your hand, and he's gonna call Ifa. And then when he throws it, the sign should tell him what is happening to you and what is the best thing for you to do right now, spiritually, for you to be the best person of yourself.
Doing a divination in Cuba was very interesting. There were some few differences between how it's done in Ghana and how it's done in Cuba. One of the first things I noticed was in Ghana, the boko is always sitting on a mat on the floor, whereas in Cuba we did it on a table. And obviously the language difference. In Ghana it's conducted in Ewe, whereas in Cuba they speak a liturgical dialect of Yoruba called Lukumi. So there are some minor differences in pronunciation of the signs. And also the chain. In Ghana we call the chain the gumaga, and in Cuba it's called equele. And in Ghana they're made with palm kernels, whereas in Cuba it's coconut shells and mango seeds. And it was very interesting because I got some advice. Some advice that I had got from my bokos in Ghana was the same thing I was told in Cuba, and I was very surprised at that. And I was just very impressed at how the Cubans were able to maintain the spiritual practice with such accuracy over such a long time. It was amazing to watch.
El primer rey, Eyope. Este, Ogundameyi. Este, Osameyi. Este, Ikameyi. Este, Otribomeyi. ¿Sabe cuántos sueldos sale ahí? 256 meses. Este ligado con este y este ligado con este.
Going to the church of St. Lazaro or Babaluaye was a very eye-opening experience for me, because it was the first time in which I saw people who practice West African religion and people who practice Christianity all in the same place and able to worship. So you had people who were wearing like their traditional beads who represent like the Orisha faith, and then normal, Catholics, and then they were praying to the same, deities. They were, doing ablution and cleansing themselves in the same stream, and it was very peaceful. And for me, it was nice to see that in Cuba, because in Ghana or in a lot of African countries, it's seen as being, you can never practice the traditional at the same time practice Christianity. They are seen as mutually exclusive. Whereas in Cuba, we're all practicing this together, and that was very interesting to see. And it shows, or it proves to me, that Christianity and traditional African religion are not mutually exclusive. They can exist harmoniously and peacefully in the same place. You just need an open mind and tolerance. All people who came on the trip did a divination and a reading with Ifa, and they recommended that we do some rituals. And when they did the reading, they said that it should be me that did the rituals for them. And it was a moment in which we could show the Cuban people what our practice was. So first half of the week, we saw them doing many rituals. They did rituals for me, for Vikram, for everybody, and it was very nice to see that. And so for this part, it was us that were showing them how we do. And we had about 5 different Cuban babalaos or priests, Ifa priests, and they were all very excited to see what we had to offer. And we showed them videos of rituals that we have done in Ghana with our family, with our father, with our cousins. We showed them particularly one video in which my cousin was dancing with knives, and he was doing a warrior dance, and they were watching this video and they were very excited to see this, and they're like, oh wow, it's great to see this African power.
One of my favorite experiences in Cuba was once we were asking a lady for directions and I was filming it, and then she asked me, why are you filming? And so I'm like, oh, we're making a documentary on Cuba. And then she's like, oh, okay. And then she tells me to come into her house, and right as we get in there was a big altar with some orishas there. She shows them to me, and then she takes me to another room, and then there are more orishas, and she's just like explaining each to me. And I was just surprised at how welcoming she was and how proud she was to just show me her spiritual thing, because stuff like that would just not happen here in Ghana. People are not so open about their practice, so I was really amazed at that.
So I cried the second day that I was in Cuba at a nightclub. And the reason why I cried was I was so moved by how proud the people were to be African and so proud of their spiritual practice. Going to Cuba made me realize that traditional religion and foreign religions like Christianity are not mutually exclusive, that they can peacefully coexist at the same time. Cuba shows like a nice blend of the two, and it reminded me of the proverb that says, the sky is vast enough that 2 birds flying do not need to fly and bump into one another. And I hope that within my lifetime, I'll see an Africa that is more tolerant of indigenous African religions, and that they could peacefully coexist with foreign religions.